We're going to start our conversation looking at the latest development in India, looking at the economic investment and the trade agreement that is about to be finalized between India and some European countries. You call them the European Free Trade Association, to the tune of $100 billion. And that agreement will last for the next 15 years. What will be the impact of this on the Nigeria economy? And that's what on the India economy rather, and that's what our guests will expand and provide perspective about it. We are being joined by our in-house analyst. We have Sam Orovwuje. Glad you have joined us. Good morning.
Good morning, Femi. A pleasure to be here.
Good morning.
Good morning, Blessing, and thank you.
You look good and classic. You seem not to be affected by what happened yesterday. Do you follow sport?
I do.
Okay, so what's your take on that?
I think that has been dusted yesterday, but regrettably that we didn't win. But I think the team that played the best deserve to win, even though we have emotional attachment to our own player. But that's given. That has been. But then at least we got to some level of.
So we have something to celebrate.
Celebrate as well. So,
right,
but the learning lessons. Those are what is critical for the sport authority to build upon, in my view.
Nigerians are resilient people, so no wonder that he's looking bright this morning and moving ahead.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, let's get back to the main conversation, which is to look at the trade investment between India and some European nations to the tune of $100 billion. The projection is that this agreement is going to create about 1 million jobs. What's your quick reaction to this? Give us a background to this, and what do you think would be the impact of this to the economy of India?
Okay, Modi's government has been very up and doing when it talked about international cooperations and development. This recent one between the European Free Trade Association to the tune of about $100 million is to fast track India's economic growth and development, particularly on digital infrastructure for the next 15 years. I think that will open up the development space in India, particularly on that digital infrastructure, which is a major imperative for this loan arrangement from Switzerland in particular. So I think beyond that, you're equally going to have a kind of backward integration from that investment. The rate of employment will improve tremendously. So we must salute Modi's government for having this initiative. But this loan is not going to just come once. It's going to come in tranches, and it will aid economic growth and development of India for the next 15 years. And those who are providing the loan will equally benefit, because there are certain exchanges in terms of that trade agreement that has just been brokered between the European Free Trade Association.
All right, so the European Free Trade Association, in this trade deal spearheaded by Switzerland with India. Now, what do you think has been the attraction for the EFTA to India?
One, India have the human capital in terms of the digital infrastructure, which is one of the trade package. Then India has the required skill set for that sector. So I'm sure that will have been the motivating factor for that association to want to put investment in India, in my view.
Now, looking at the population of India, which is over 1 billion, it's also strategic. Do you consider it something necessary to have this kind of trade deal? And then what would be the impact of this on the growth of India, looking at the economy? The GDP it's about $4 trillion. And what do you expect will come out of this deal? Perhaps not in the next 15 years, but since this is going to be in tranches, let's say in the next 5 or 10 years.
No, I think the Indian government was very open when they went into this negotiation, that this is to strengthen their economic growth and development, and particularly they want to do part of that investment in digital infrastructure. So to that extent, the market is there. the technical infrastructure is there. So once this trade collaboration comes through, it will impact positively in terms of economic development of India, which is the main reason that this facility is taken from the European Free Trade Association in Switzerland.
So this arrangement will also permit professionals from India to move to Europe. Now, what do you think is going to be the benefit for the European countries that are in this investment with India?
There will be transfer of skills. There will be transfer of manpower. Then to that extent, that will improve on the social standing and economic standing of India from the perspective of this new investment that is coming in. And I do know for sure that with the kind of leadership Modi has been providing in recent time, even though with some controversy, this will quickly come to speed to improve on the economic growth of India.
Now, if you look at the labor force in India, you have more of them in agric, sector and in service sector. Do you think, as a strategist, that the president or the prime minister should think of that sector with this kind of investment? Should look at the agric and the service sector, since that constitutes the bulk of the labor force in India?
Yeah, if you look at the full document, to a large extent, there are various sectors that are targeted with that 100 billion investment. But I think the major focus, maybe from the first tranche of disbursement, is looking at the digital infrastructure, which India has a comparative advantage of. So that extent, where this financial inflow from Europe gets into India, that will improve on the infrastructure. The market is there, and that exchange of ideas and knowledge and skill sets between the European Union, so to speak now, and that of India, that will improve on the existing trade and bilateral relationship that exists. And it will be a win-win situation for both countries that are involved in that agreement.
Recent, India has been attracting lots of foreign direct investment from other countries. So why do you think India has become the sweetheart of many nations where they want to put their money?
Well, the population is there, number one. Number two, to a very large extent, the government has been stable over a period of time. So if you look at those parameters for those who want to invest, once there's a stable economy and they can repatriate their fund, the tax regime is equally okay, and the government in recent years has captured the data of Indians. So to that extent, people can do some market trends and they see how their investment can come back quickly. And I think that is one of the attractions to India.
Now, there are two parties involved here. You have India talking about this trade agreement and the European Free Trade Associations. What could likely be the interest of European Free Trade Association here? Because as we speak, India is not a member, and then they're being considered as a partner in this kind of agreement. So for the European Free Trade Associations, what would be the interest here?
For them to lend a hand in terms of financial service to India, they will have done what they are called financial due diligence. So the investment is safe, and this will provide an impetus for them eventually to join that European Free Trade Association, which is a trade collaboration between those associations in Europe and that of India. So I think, like I mentioned earlier, it will improve on the investment climate in India. There will be exchange of ideas and resources beyond even finances that will sustain the economic growth of India, for which that agreement was meant to serve in the first instance.
Now, it is reported that this trade deal will also ensure market access for some agricultural projects. Usually when trades like this, trade deals like this are done in Asia, the location or the first point of call will be China. Now, the move to India and even the market access to agricultural projects, what do you think is going to create in Asia?
No, I don't think it will create any problem.
Not problem. Like in terms of development, how does it position Asia?
No, India in particular. Asia is already a destination, but then when you talk about positioning vis-a-vis the European Free Trade Association, that would benefit from that agreement in terms of having access to agro industry in India. Therefore, that will improve on the trade relationship between them. So that will sustain the market in India where they are able to export their commodities to Europe, so which will benefit them. On the other hand, you have a finance inflow into India from Europe that will be able to help them to expand their market. So like I mentioned in the previous conversation, that will provide a win-win situation for those who are partnering in terms of that agreement.
Now let's expand this conversation, provide some background as regards the characteristics of the economy of India. India has a GDP of about $3.7 trillion, and then you have the service sector contributes about 50% to that GDP. Why do you think the service sector is very crucial to the economy of India and having that kind of significant impact on the GDP?
All right, generally service contributes a great deal to economic activity of any nation. So if you look at the size of India, the population in itself, when you have about 50% contributing to that, that just gives you an insight into the way India is configured. But then what is important is that India has made some tremendous strides in terms of the way they've developed the ICT infrastructure, which is essentially a service sector. India has exported more than any country in the world ICT technology across the globe. If you look at the global companies, the top 20 global companies, about 18 of them are headed by India, particularly ICT companies. So service sector is one of the major mainstay of the India economy, and that will continue to drive economic growth and development in that country, particularly in terms of export, and people will always come in because of that stride that they have made in the ICT sector.
So the India economy is also agro-based, and this $100 billion trade deal that India is about closing with the EFTA is going to focus on already existing manufacturing projects and new ones. So what do you think it will be in that direction, since it's also an agro-based nation? Are we going to see more of more food processing, manufacturing, and all of that?
Yes, I think the loan will scale up small and medium enterprise and core manufacturing. In that agreement, remember that the European Free Trade Association is equally targeting the market, so that once that agro sector is developed, the labor is there, cheap labor, so to speak, is there. So they are able to export some of those finished items into Europe. Like we mentioned earlier, that we enhance the relationship further. So the market is there, then India itself will be able to export some of those commodities which they have core competence into the European market.
It's also interesting to know that India is also the hub when it comes to medical tourism. Even Africans, Nigerians, you see them going to India for surgeries, and maybe they feel they can get the best of service. But why do you think that has played a strategic role in the development of the economy of India?
It's as a result of massive investment in education, particularly STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. India has a big reservoir of science, technology, and engineering, mathematics. I recall in my days in the college, about 80% of the teaching force in my college were Indians, science teachers, geography teacher, even up to literature teacher, were Indian. So they have that skill set, which they have invested so much in. So that, in the long run, has benefited the country in terms of human capacity development, which to a very large extent has improved in terms of what they export and why people believe in that market.
All right. Like I said earlier, India has been the sweetheart of many nations, but currently the Secretary General of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations is visiting India. It's going to be a 5 to 6 day visit, and this is the first visit since assuming office. What do you think are going to be the thrust of this visit?
Okay, Kao Kim Horton, the Secretary General that came into office January last year, this is his first visit to India. I think the visit is as a result of the collaboration of that union with a view to see how they can fine-tune the relationship with India to upscale trade and investment relationship. Just like the discussion we made earlier, we talked about earlier, is one of the strategic move to see how they can consolidate the relationship within the Asian nation.
Let's still revisit the issue of the population of India, because the idea of this conversation is to have an overview of what is going on for India, and then lessons for other nations. Now, if you look at the population, will you say it has been significantly be a blessing or a barrier? What are the challenges that have been posed by having that kind of population, the largest in the world, over 1 billion?
Yeah, from economic perspective, I don't think it's a barrier. It's a huge market, just like the conversation we'll be making around Africa, which is over 1 billion in terms of population. But the 54 African nations have not been able to consolidate on the population for the benefit of trade. So on the other hand, India's population is a big plus for them in terms of market, in terms of labor. So those large population will be able to sustain the economic activities that will sustain economic growth and development.
All right, back to the visit of the ASEA and Secretary General to India. What impact will it have on the region?
No, I think the Secretary General is just visiting the countries that make up the association to be able to see how they can galvanize trade and investment opportunity within that region and strengthen the collaboration that already exists, particularly bilateral and multilateral relationship that exists among the nations that make up that association.
All right, now if we're to make a comparison between what the Secretary General is doing and, like you said, is to foster collaboration in terms of trade and cooperation in that region. Let's look at the West African region, ECOWAS. Do you think that some type of doing something similar like that would in any way, particularly at this point, help the relationship between West African countries, just like the Southeast Asian nations are doing?
The founding fathers of ECOWAS in 1975-76, their intention was to see how we can strengthen the relationship within the sub-region, how we can take advantage of free trade, free movement of people. But over time, the politics of the individual countries that make up the economic community leave much to be desired, particularly where you have strong men without strong institution. It has become a major challenge. Therefore, if you look at the breakaway of about 3 countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger recently to form another small economic union called the Sahel Union. I think the leaders within the economic community must see how they can look at the agreements that were reached at the founding of the economic community and how to strengthen that free movement and free trade that can benefit the country. But as we speak, if you look at the configuration of the members of that community into Francophone, Anglophone, Lusophone, and all that, this political underpinning based on the colonial heritage has become a major challenge. You'll be talking about a common currency. They have an agreement to have the Lagos Cotonou corridor in terms of road infrastructure. You talk about the gas infrastructure. As we speak, some of those promissory notes that were made has not come to fruition. To that extent, is a major challenge for the development of that economic community, the union. I don't know how far we can sustain where in the last how many years of its existence, about 4 countries, including Mauritania, who left earlier, has reduced the number of, so it's weakening politically. To what extent they can sustain that remain to be seen in the nearest future.
Now, looking at the success story of the achievements recorded by India when it comes to the issue of the economy, is the 6th largest economy in the world. And looking at the population, how they've been able to manage that population, what are the lessons here for African countries in respect to the issue of management of their population? Nigeria is an example, you know, and also looking at the management of the economy. Now they are the 6th largest in the world.
All right, the first lesson we can take as Africa, particularly Nigeria, is the concept of democracy and good governance. India, in the last how many years, has shown the world that democracy can survive beyond Western democracies. So that's the first lesson. So good governance is very essential for Africa. Number 2, they took advantage of their population. Africa, therefore, must take advantage of its 1 billion population so that they can trade among themselves. Then on the other hand, we must make massive investment in human capital, particularly on the ICT sector, by government supporting STEM education. That has been the major heritage that India has bequeathed to its own society. So if we're able to look at this, and the ability to repatriate your fund, your investment from India, they have a good investment package that those who bring their investment to India, they're able to take their investment out as at when due. So as Africans, good governance is very essential, investment in education and human capacity, and then your ability to be able to have what you call ease of doing business will become a very good imperative for Africa to bring more investment.
Now, in the aspect of agriculture, which India has also given prominence in their economy, what do you think Nigeria can learn from there?
I think more in terms of mechanized farming and access to credit. India has a massive investment in the agro sector, where they put so much money in mechanized farming. Then access to credit is relatively better. So those are the lessons that we can take from India. But then we must provide the ecosystem in terms of ease of doing business, so that when people bring their investment here, they can always sustain those investments, and when there's a need to repatriate their fund, then they can repatriate their fund. And look at the challenge that the air transport business is facing in Nigeria, where monies are tied down here and the government is not able to repatriate some millions of dollars back to those who are bringing their aircraft into Nigeria. That's not too good for investment.
You know, like we said earlier, most Nigerians travel to India for medical tourism. So what kind of partnership would you expect between India and Nigeria in that regard? I know fully well that most of the pharmaceutical products here are also being produced there, the raw materials and some of the drugs that we consume here. Now, what kind of comparative advantage would that bring to Nigeria, especially in the area of health and tourism, if there is a proper partnership in this regard?
I think as we speak, there's a great relationship in terms of pharmaceutical relationship between India and Nigeria. Most of the pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria already have existing partnerships. So if you buy a particular medicine, you see a Nigerian brand name, and you see an Indian brand name. So there's a collaboration in that sector. But I think we need to scale up by the Indian company coming here to invest, because this is one of the biggest market when it comes to medical and pharmaceutical services. So they should bring their investment directly rather than this partnership where you manufacture those drugs, where you just do manufacture in India but marketed by XYZ company in India. So the government should look in that direction. The India-African partnership, some other African countries are benefiting more than Nigeria. So the government must find a way to strengthen that relationship. There are other sectors in terms of, I know India has a very big ICT sector in Malawi, which is supposed to have been in Nigeria. So we need to find a way that will strengthen the India-Nigerian trade relationship, then the bilateral relationship, even the multilateral relationship that exists between those countries can be strengthened. But in terms of medical tourism, just like the pharmaceuticals, we need to find a way to bring the medical practice here as well, so that we can develop a system and benefit from their own medical competencies in Nigeria. I recall some years ago, one of the biggest hospitals, I won't mention the name because of advertising purpose, wanted to make some massive investment. But then the challenge they had, the regulatory framework in terms of double taxation has stalled that investment in Nigeria. So the current government should find a way to look back into that relationship so that we can benefit massively from Indians' key competencies in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
All right, in a time where there are global issues with supply chain owing to the act of terrorism around the Suez Canal, now the Secretary General of the Southeast Asian nation visiting India. Now, in regards to the Indo-Pacific region, do you think there will be talks regarding strengthening those around the region to aid supply chain?
I think there are already talks in that regard, because once you are not able to police that maritime way, it will affect the volume of trade between Asian countries generally and other countries of the world. I do know there are serious talk between the government of those countries with a view to finding a way to reduce, number one, sea piracy, maritime threat, and the core issues of supply chain that were occasioned by the COVID-19 issues. But then, for the government to be able to sustain the economic relationship, particularly trade relationship, then the waterways must be free of pirates and even terrorists. So I think it's an ongoing discussion in international trade. Even the World Trade Organization has been clamoring for how the Pacific way can be made safer for maritime transportation.
I did a research recently, and I found out that India is also making wave when it comes to natural medicine, not just herbal medicine. Not apart from the records, being made as regards orthodox medicine, but when it comes to natural medicine, they are also doing a lot of researches in that area, making waves. What do you think should also be the lesson for Nigeria, looking at herbal medicine or natural medicine? The emphasis now is on natural medicine.
I think one of my argument and conversation elsewhere, even in this station, I'm a firm believer on that for us to do well as a nation or as a continent, we must look inward. This Western propaganda that has put African down in terms of their natural endowment must be revisited by the leadership and us as a people. So natural medicine, I was in a conference sometime in the past in Ghana, where even one of the professors from Johns Hopkins University, United States of America, was saying that no matter the level of investment that the West will make in the medicine, they cannot keep pace with Japan, China, and possibly India in terms of natural medicine. By the same token, Africa must invest in natural medicine, and this connotation of herbal concoction, to what extent do you measure? NAFDAC is there, so you provide the standardization like what they are doing elsewhere. You can standardize those products, go through clinical trials like they do elsewhere, so that these medicines can be made available. I'm a strong believer on natural products, natural food, organic food. So we must sustain this conversation so that we can look inward. That will reduce the pressure on the foreign exchange market as well.
Now, India is not also a force to reckon with when it comes to natural medicine. In terms of orthodox medicine too, it's also recognized because some medical practitioners for specialized cases are either brought from India or taken from India to other countries, or people even go there for certain procedures that are very expensive to have handled in other parts of the world. And if you look at the importation of drugs, there seems to be a lot of orthodox medicine coming into Nigeria from India. Now, what can African countries, or even Nigeria to speak specifically, what kind of partnership can they come into to benefit from India's advancement in medicine?
Like I mentioned earlier, is that there's a big collaboration between African companies, particularly Nigerian pharmaceutical company, that have partnership in terms of a co-manufacturing arrangement and a marketing arrangement for bringing those drugs. But if I understand your question correctly, what you're trying to canvass here is that African should find a way to take advantage of
in terms of partnership.
Yeah, in terms of partnership. And I said earlier that we should bring those companies here rather than just marketing the products that are produced in India. So on the other hand, if we talk about the promotion of natural medicine, rather than taking the concentrates from Nigeria to India, then you manufacture them and bring them as finished product. The government should put a policy in place and a tax incentive for manufacturing companies to take advantage of our natural medicine here. They can come and produce and sell within Nigeria. That will help us greatly.
In the case of Nigeria for natural medicine, do you think it's an issue of acceptance? Like natural medicine has not so much be accepted in Nigeria, and so it's not be given the attention it should get, the research that it needs to enable the manufacturing of different medications that can come in the way orthodox medicine come. And that's why we find that the primary product has been exported and then the finished one imported back to Nigeria.
I think the challenge for us as a people and as a country is the way our mind has been wired to believe in Western products. The products are here. People consume those products. People get healed, the consumption of those products. But the big pharmaceutical companies of the West even pay people in the medical schools to find a way to always canvass for orthodox medicine at the expense of natural medicine. So once we're able to trick our minds away from this Western imperialism, so to speak, in terms of what we consume, what we believe in, once we're able to believe first and foremost in ourselves as a people, then even as a country or as a government, then this narration will change. Some of those countries, like India, was colonized, even by the British. But then that colonial heritage in some aspect of India was not sustainable over time in terms of their culture, in terms of their language, in terms of even teaching the mathematics, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics were taught in their various language. So, but then what is special about Africa that over time we've not been able to take this colonial cap away in terms of what we patronize, what we consume, even our educational system. So these are the narrative that we must sustain so that we can get a better benefit from what we have. So the research centers are there. The research work are on the shelf. So the government need to find a way to find companies that can take this research finding and put them into manufacturing for the benefits of the average African or Nigerian.
Now, it's better to situate this conversation, properly. We mustn't sound as if everything is rosy for India, because there are two sides to a coin. And the truth is, India is still battling with infrastructural challenges. Would you expect that the Indian authority will take a drastic step in controlling the population? Will that be necessary, looking at the infrastructural deficit and some of the challenges that has been posed by the large population that the country has?
There are more issues when it talks about population dynamics, population control. There are those who believe that you don't necessarily need to overly control population. There are those who believe that you should control population. But then, if you look at the landmass of India vis-a-vis the population ratio, I think that is not too bad. Effort has been made by successive government to a very large extent to control population. But the challenge of population dynamics is that as you are trying to control population, your population will be aging. And so there are many countries that are already facing that challenge, particularly China. China is now giving incentive for people to have children, because that population control mechanism that was put in place is already hurting the system. So is a very contentious debate when you talk about population control. But with the landmass of India, with the level of development that India has had so far, even though they have some infrastructure challenge, with the relationship they have with the West, and that this new $100 million facility from the European Finance Association, a trade association rather, will help to see how they can scale up their various infrastructure. So, but the government of Modi in the last how many years has done tremendously well, in my view, in terms of improving on the lots of India. So African leaders in particular must take some strategic lessons from the way India has been doing in the past few years, in spite of their challenge. They have some challenges even in terms of religion, some of the things we face even in Nigeria in particular, but in spite of that, they are pulling a greater majority of Indians from the poverty index.
Now, do you think the population of India is part of what is giving it relevance and influence in Asia, particularly in Southeast Asia?
I think so, to a very large extent. The market is there. The population, once you have a large population, then that will be able to sustain manufacturing, services, and other forms of market, even financial services. So is a strength. If you look at the SWOT analysis of the country as a nation, the population is a strength. Then the human capital, just like we have in Nigeria, we have the human capital. So to what extent can we exploit the human capital? And their investment in education that's always paid off.
Now, let's paint all the sides. We've been looking at the economic side, but let's also look at the lifestyle of Indians. If you observe critically, you will observe that Indians are naturally conservative. They're not extravagant, and perhaps that informs some of the decisions they make about life. How has that impacted their disposition to value or service?
I think essentially it's about having a deep insight about their culture. The Indian culture has sustained its population. They believe in their religion. They believe in their traditional ways of doing things, in spite of the impact of the West. They didn't throw away their culture. So I think that has been able to sustain their value. To a very large extent, they are disciplined. They value education. So those are the things that will have sustained them over a period of time. So if we take that lessons for ourselves, so culture is very critical to value, and values are critical to leadership as well.
In terms of relationship with countries, India seems to have good relationship with many countries of the world. What do you think has helped them achieve that?
That again is what we just spoke to earlier. Value, strong value, discipline, and Indians equally like Nigerians who move around the world to do business. So they travel a lot, and they equally are culturalized with local values when they go into any environment to sustain their businesses.